Good morning to everyone from Florida. I am Daniil Zavlunov, the chair of this first session on Russian music miscellanea. And we have three back-to-back talks this morning. And from what I can tell right now, we're missing two of our three speakers. But luckily, the first one is here. And I'm not going to introduce the speakers formally because the conference program has all the details you need. Hopefully, this will give us more time to ask questions. Our first presenter is Wai-Ling Cheong, who is going to be speaking to us about Scriabin's Rhythmic Modernism. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So first of all, greetings from Hong Kong. I've joined this conference, I think 2 years ago, 2019, and ever since that time, it seems that so much have changed. In any case, I would get started right away. Metric and rhythmic novelty in Scriabin's music have drawn far less critical attention from commentators when compared to pitch organization. This analytical inquiry into musical modernism in Scriabin's music focuses on his innovative approaches to meter and rhythm in the 10 piano sonatas. Scriabin composed his piano sonatas from the last decade of the 19th century up to 1913, the year of the Rites of Spring's premiere in Paris. Following the Chopinesque Sonata number 1 to 3, we hear in Sonata number 4 that changes are imminent. A critical turning point then comes with Sonata number 5 by the time of Scriabin's late sonatas, number 6 to 10, composed within a relatively short time from 1911 to 1913. There's no longer any question left about Scriabin's turn, like his contemporaries, to musical modernism. From Sonata number 6 onwards, Scriabin abandoned the use of key signatures as his music became increasingly distant from major-minor tonality. But he never gave up on the time signature. This is so even when his late music becomes metrically ambiguous or, in more extreme cases, quite literally non-metrical. There's no lack of discussion of the discrepancies between notated meter and oral meter in the existing literature, but the discrepancies between notated meter and non-metrical music are rarely examined. One important exception is Messiaen's theorization of rhythmic modernism in Technique of my Musical Language, and in volumes 1, 2, and 6 of his Traité de rythme, de couleur et d'ornithologie. Messiaen claims to be a rhythmician, although he is not usually recognized as a theorist in Anglo-American scholarship. Thus, I find Messiaen's discussion more relevant to study of Scriabin's rhythmic modernism than, say, the research works of Christopher Hastie or Justin London, is because much of Messiaen's theory stemmed from his analytical inquiry into novel rhythmic effects he heard in music by Debussy and Stravinsky, of which the Rites of Spring stands out as a particularly important case study. Apart from the discrepancies between notated meter and non-metrical music, Messiaen's theorization of such new approaches as additive versus divisive rhythm, non-retrogradable rhythm, archetypal Greek rhythms, duration series, and his theory of rhythmic characters are all found relevant to this study. The following discussion begins with a survey of Scriabin's use of time signatures in his piano sonatas before we advance into an investigation of his application of metrical notation to music that is not simply metrical, and also cases where the aforementioned techniques, i.e. additive rhythm, non-retrogradable rhythm, etc., are prominently featured. A survey of Scriabin's use of time signature in his 10 sonatas shows a sudden change from the use of just 1 or 2 time signatures within a movement, as listed here, sonatas number 1, 2, 4, to frequent changes. This happened almost overnight from sonata number 5 onward. Concomitantly, quintuple time, that is 5/8, appears frequently, it's highlighted in yellow here. Scriabin also plays repeatedly with the superimposition of conflicting time signatures in his late sonatas. So it's shown here, 2/8 superimposed with 3/8. This is sonata number 6. It's also happening in sonata number 7, number 8, and 10. These statistical findings can nonetheless be quite misleading, since the time signatures we read in the scores do not necessarily translate into music in actual terms. To take an obvious example, a passage that is notated in 6/8 may in fact be alternating between 6/8 and 3/4. Scriabin's early sonatas are prevailingly metrical. What might have been considered a novel approach then is his occasional use of metrical dissonance, and more specifically displacement dissonance, and that is Harold Krebs' term. In the third movement of sonata number 1, the use of displacement dissonance is made obvious by his beaming of a triplet pattern across the bar line, which goes against the metrical grid prescribed by the meter. Let's listen to the music. Both the melody and the accompaniment are in 12/8, but there's a time lag of an 8-note triplet between them. This illustrates well the concept of displacement dissonance in that the same meter is heard in the upper and lower parts, and yet they are not synchronized in time. Similarly, in the second movement of sonata number 3, both the upper parts and the lower parts are in 4/8, but they are mismatched in time. We observe the same approach in the first movement of sonata number 2. The whole movement is notated in 3/4. The left-hand accompaniment is again played ahead of the melody, this time by 1 8-note triplets. There's much rhythmic interest in the melody. By taking an 8-note triplet to be the basic units, I add numbers to indicate the durations of the melody's constituent chords and notes. Initially, it unfolds through the duration of 2 + 2 + 2 + 2 8-note triplets, and is in this sense in duple time. But the following accented chord lasts 3 8-note triplets, and the ending takes up 4 8-note triplets. The notational use of time signature and isochronous measures, i.e. measures of the same length, does not work well here because the melody, which grows from 2, 2, 2, 2 through 3 to 4 8-note triplets, suggests that an additive process is in play. Another early attempts were being made to create weakened metrical effects appears in the first movement of sonata number 4. Despite the mixed use of tied notes and quintuplets, all the beats, including down beats and the subsequent beats within a measure, are still clearly perceptible. Sonata number 5 is an important landmark in Scriabin's development of rhythmic modernism. Let's listen to the opening of Sonata number 5 first. By the way, this is very loud, so I just give this piece of warning. The passage marked Languido is characterized by frequent changes of time signature, and notes are often tied to cancel beat perception at the tactus level. Here, the time signature and the metrical grid have little, if any, correlation with the rhythm. The music is far from being metrical, despite Scriabin's use of shifting meters in the score. Sonata number 8 also features much rhythmic fluidity and also a rare use of duplets within quintuplets, and that is circled in red here. And this brings irregular divisions of beats at more than one level. Again, although the music is notated in 6/8, we often hear something different. For example, in the short passage, they exhibit additive rhythm growing from 1 through 2 to 3/8 notes. It does not make the sense to play the third chord, which is marked diminuendo, as a single patient. Apart from an inclination toward the aesthetics of rhythmic fluidity, Scriabin's late sonatas also shows a tendency for phrases and not just meters to become less well-defined. There are cases where Scriabin composed in a Stravinsky fashion by juxtaposing distinct blocks of materials rather than phrases. The concepts of phrase rhythm therefore become irrelevant, and it seems more apt to call it block-based rhythm. The abrupt juxtaposition of blocks is already at work in Scriabin Sonata number 5. This is likely the earliest example from his sonatas. To start with, both Block A and Block B take up 2 measures each. Block A is assertive but melodious in character, while Block B is chordal in setting. What happens here is that the contrasting Block A and Block B keep alternating. So we have AB, AB, AB. But the last Block B is extended from taking up just 2 measures to become 16 measures long. Similar use of a block-based approach is also evidenced in Scriabin's late sonatas. Before we move on to discuss the 6th and 7th sonata, however, let's pause for sonata number 5's Block B first, since its rhythmic profile is worth exploring further. We observe that the central part of Block B is flanked by rhythms that are retrogrades of one another. The pattern as a whole is non-retrogradable in that we get the same duration pattern regardless of whether we play from left to right or reversely from right to left. This non-retrogradable rhythm, Messiaen's term, works against the meter. What is more, this series of longs and shorts can be partitioned differently into a succession of archetypal Greek rhythms. Dactyl, IM, Pion 2, that is in measure 98. In either case, what stands out is that we hear nothing but longs and shorts that are in 2-to-1 ratio, and that the longs and shorts are grouped in ways that upset a notated 6/8 meter, or indeed any other conventional meter. A comparison with Stravinsky's August of Spring may seem a bit far-fetched, but the similarities between them cannot be simply dismissed. Sonata number 6 features many more passages that show how Scriabin juxtaposed blocks of contrasting materials for longer time periods. But the special kind of rhythmic writing we encountered in Block B of Sonata number 5 has no place in it. Indeed, it did not resurface until Vaclav Flam, which was originally intended to be his Sonata number 11. In the following passage taken from Sonata number 6, there are altogether 4 rather than just 2 distinct blocks, and they are denoted from A to D. The blocks are of the same length, 2 measures each, and yet they have markedly different pitch and rhythmic attributes. Again, we don't hear any phrase in the conventional sense, but rather a quick permutation of distinct blocks, including some volatile pitch and rhythmic settings, which bring with them a strong sense of instability. So we have the pattern A, B, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, D, and then it goes on to be B, C, D, C, etc. Sonata number 7 gives an even more impressive example. It juxtaposes 2 different blocks right at the outset. The melodic profile of the highly active block A is clearly triadic, and block B, when first stated, comprises essentially the repetition of one chord, which is marked Miscellanea sonore. Let's call it chord X. When block B is stated a second time, chord X becomes transposed, but it appears in isolation and is not repeated. When block B is stated a third time, marked Miscellanea sonore again, chord X is transposed through an interval cycle of 3 semitones to generate a sequence of block chords. Block B therefore becomes dramatically extended in length. Okay, so let's listen to this. Well, eminent theorists like E.T. Kong and Pierre Van den Toorn understood this kind of music as comprising the abrupt cutting and pasting of blocks of pitch materials. Messiaen valued it more as an innovative approach to rhythm, an additive approach that contrasts with the divisive approach to temporal design typical of conventional meter-based music. Messiaen referred to this kind of rhythmic setting metaphorically as an interplay of rhythmic characters. He likens the augmentation and diminution in the durations defined by the individual blocks to what happens in a drama, where there are characters who attack and others who are attacked. Messiaen put forth his theory of rhythmic characters in association with his analysis of the rites of spring, but this kind of block-based rhythm is also evident in Scriabin's music composed around the same time. So a brief conclusion. Following Scriabin's exploration of metrical dissonance in his early sonatas, he gradually distanced himself from metrical regularities and added a modernist twist to the metric rhythmic sphere and not just the pitch domain. From Sonata number 5 onward, Scriabin actively experimented with the dissolution of major-minor tonality in tandem with that of meter. Although Scriabin remains constrained by the staff notation to convey what he envisioned in his late sonatas, he became increasingly tilted toward the use of an additive rather than a divisive approach to work against the, quote, tyranny of the bar line, end quote. There's also evidence that he deliberately distorts what the metrical notation prescribes and takes it as a way to bring about rhythmic novelties. Block-based music, which does away with phrase rhythm, is of course also additive in principle, with distinct blocks rather than just notes added together one after the other to form a duration series at a higher structural level. That both Scriabin and Stravinsky adopted the block-based approach in the early 1910s suggests that it had become trendy at the time. Regretfully, Scriabin's pursuit of new metric rhythmic effects, unlike Stravinsky's, was cut short by his premature death in 1915. And we also come to understand them belatedly. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have plenty of time for questions. I can't see everyone's screen, so I can't see. Wai-Ling, do you think you can stop sharing your PowerPoints?
Oh, sure.
And we can see everyone together. Are there any questions? I'll ask a question. Did Scriabin actually talk about metrical innovation himself? Pardon my ignorance, I am no Scriabin scholar.
Well, I'm not aware of his mentioning of kind of experiment in this kind of metric or rhythmic dimension. I mean, a lot of course, the discussion has been on pitch organization. And it's not just that, I mean, it's not just with him, but also in the existing literature. I think it's with most music, we tend to focus on pitch organization anyway.
Yeah.
But of course, Stravinsky is an exception. I mean, there are lots more discussion of his kind of special rhythmic innovation. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, do you think?
I mean, remarks are very welcome because if there are things that I mean, people find not so convincing, it's very welcome to. I mean, I would like to hear about any opinion.
Do you think that in a way this rhythmic modularity and innovation of various other kinds, do you think it in some ways compensates for the stasis, the harmonic stasis that begins to permeate Scriabin's later works? Kind of, there's a lot of kind of these color blocks of music, right, in his late works where the music stops. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, metrically and rhythmically, it's very active. Do you think that's the way to compensate for that harmonic collectional stasis?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think there are passages where he kind of superimpose many layers of music, but they are not, in essence, rhythmically innovative, I would say. It's still pretty much metrical, although it sounds quite sophisticated because there are so many layers and they are in counterpoints and all that. So with this study, I don't see him as deliberately doing that in order to kind of cover up for the long passages of using, say, just one octatonic collection, things like this. And he does have that kind of thing. But there are some very interesting kind of rhythmic design, not in the sonata, so I'm not showing it today, which show that he should be quite conscious about that. But I guess he hasn't been working on it that systematically. But this kind of block-based thing is it quite Russian? Because I think Rimsky-Korsakov also has it. And it might be also tied to the collage arts work, say by Picasso and Brask, which happened at around the same time.
Other questions or comments? I'll ask one more. Is there any sort of symbolism in this 5/8 meter that suddenly becomes so prevalent in his late works?
5/8, I think, is also in Glinker's.
Oh, absolutely.
Music and also Tchaikovsky. So I think I've read that it's kind of something rather Russian. So I doubt whether maybe there is, but it's also, I think your Russian colleagues can say a lot more because I adore Russian music, but I don't have a lot of, backup about the culture.
Yeah, I mean, 5/8 and 5/4 are very prevalent in Russian music before Scriabin, but he wasn't using it very actively until this time. And so I was wondering if there's any particular reason why he switched to such active presence of that medium. I think David had a question. So David, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for such a wonderful talk. Where you started your paper, it really did occur to me, yeah, we don't really talk about rhythm and Scriabin very much for all the time we spend talking about pitch. I was interested by just the timeline you showed at the beginning of how the orchestral works were interspersed amongst the sonatas. And I was just curious if you had taken a look at any similar rhythmic practices in the orchestral works. Obviously, there's a very different sort of aural sense of rhythm as we listen to those works. We don't have the sort of extreme percussive gestures of the left hand as we have in the piano works. But I was curious if there's any interplay or similarity between the way rhythm is configured in the orchestral works.
Well, my answer is quite short. I haven't really looked into those orchestral works, but this is just an impression. I think it's probably not that much there, because it's a different kind of domain. With piano, with some of the piano works, he is really doing some experiments in this kind of more private musical creative world for him. But I really haven't looked into that, so I shouldn't say anything about that. But thank you for this idea.
Maria, please.
I have a quick question. Sorry, how much do you think the sort of almost obsession for Scriabin on rhythm might be to do with the general piano culture at that time, really looking towards the piano as a speaking instrument rather than a singing instrument? Because I think in piano pedagogy, we always sort of let the piano sing. But Zverev and when he teaches Rachmaninoff and Scriabin, Metna, they all talk about the piano speaking. And I was just curious about Savaniev's Muzika Rechi. There's a book, there's the music of speech, and whether this is sort of playing on his mind or encouraging him any way, or if there's maybe a shift in priorities happening with Scriabin at this point.
I probably can't answer this question well, but it's very interesting. I'm not aware of this piano speak. How does it, what does it exactly mean versus that the piano sing? Is it more like recitative or?
That's what they were trying to define really quite sort of obsessively at this point, which is that you've got different kinds of rhythm. So you've got metric rhythm, but then you've also got the rhythm of speech that you intersperse onto that. So there's this like a huge obsession with stopping the piano singing and the piano becoming a speaking instrument. And I think the sort of salons at the time with the poetry readings, maybe I don't know, are sort of pushing that forward. But I don't know if you sort of feel that this obsession with rhythmical structures that seems to be so, I mean, congratulations for doing it. I mean, it just seems so natural to do in Scriabin. Whether it's a feature outside in Europe somewhere as well, or is it actually just a kind of concentrated thing in Scriabin? Or
I think this kind of, not talking about the block-based approach, but the rhythmic fluidity that is like not bound by these bars of equal lengths, but it is just, so it's a bit more like speech in a way. I think has a lot to do with what's happening in France, because Debussy's music, it's trying to become like water. So that's why I'm using Messiaen's analysis of Debussy's music. He talked about Debussy's music of water. And he's essentially saying that, I mean, you look at all these tides, they happen where the beats come, so that the beats is cancelled out. And so the notation really is not telling us about the rhythm. We need to get beyond the notation to understand the rhythm, although the composer still is tied, I mean, is constrained by using the notation. Of course, I need to do more research, but I think what's happening in France, French composers, I think there's these things going on. And in fact, Messiaen's analysis of the rites of spring is very extensive and detailed, and he divided into two kinds or two worlds of rhythm, two kind of rhythmic world. And one is the very beginning, the introduction to part one. And he think that is the kind of fluid rhythm that is not very, percussive, or it's just kind of very fluid. I mean, I just can't think of any other better word. But in the other parts of the rites of spring, it's this kind of really, you have the beats, very strong beats, but they're just not organized in the conventional way. But it does depend on the beats, right? This kind of strong beats to get through or to become effective, but not so in the first, the introduction. So, and he related the introduction to Debussy, that kind of, so I don't know whether it makes sense, especially I would like to hear from performance, of course.
No, I think that's fascinating. I was just wondering whether there was a, maybe the scientific advances with sort of pulses of energy are sort of playing on the minds of people at this time, and they're just generally trying to look at, because French, of course, yeah, we look at the music of Varese going on, yeah, and Dutilleux, and even the birdsong of Messiaen. So you can see that, of course, there's a French core to all this that Scriabin is picking up, and of course maybe the cultural sympathies might be in there. But other than the French connection, is it less obvious in other, I don't know, or?
I've been reading things about the revival of ancient Greek rhythm, and there's just a lot of discussion about rhythm at Paris Conservatoire at the time, around the end of 19th century and early 20th century. And of course, all these things seem to have happened with Paris very much as a center. Scriabin is not exactly there, but of course, the Russian society, I mean, the French influence is very strong. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Wai-Ling.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So I don't know how we're going to move on. We're missing the next two speakers on the program. Larissa, should I go ahead and fast forward to my own paper?
I think that would be the solution, because Ming Zhao just sent a message she cannot connect to Zoom. And Philip earlier conveyed that he hopes to have a good connection, but he might have trouble. So that's probably what's happening right now. Hopefully he will come back soon. So we should proceed with the paper. And if you want to present your paper, even though it's not the session, it can be a solution.
All right, we can do that. And if neither of the speakers join, David